In the late 19th century, the Philippines is a colony of Spain. The Spanish colonial government has imposed harsh measures on the Filipino people, including forced labor, high taxes, and restrictions on freedom of speech and assembly. Despite these challenges, there are small groups of Filipinos who are beginning to agitate for greater autonomy and independence. The Philippines was a colony of Spain for more than 300 years, until it was ceded by the United States in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. Although the Filipinos initially welcomed the Americans as liberators, they soon realized that the Americans had no intention of granting them independence. This led to the birth of the Philippine independence movement during the American period. One of the main grievances of the Filipinos was the denial of their right to self-determination. The Americans viewed the Filipinos as inferior and unprepared for self-government, and they saw their colonization as a civilizing mission. This attitude was reflected in the Philippines Organic Act of 1902, which established a colonial government in the Philippines and provided a bicameral legislature composed of an elected lower house and an appointed upper house. Independence movement gained momentum in the 1930s when the American promised to grant the Philippines independence in the near future. In 1935, the Philippines granted Commonwealth government was tasked with preparing the country for independence, which was scheduled for 1946.
The struggle for independence during the American period was marked by the efforts of many brave individuals who fought for their country's freedom. First is Emilio Aguinaldo. Aguinaldo was a revolutionary leader and the first president of the Philippine Republic. He led the fight against Spanish colonial rule and continued to lead the resistance against the Americans. Aguinaldo's leadership was instrumental in securing the country's independence, and he remains a prominent figure in the Philippine history to this day. Next is Apolinario Mabini. Mabini was a political philosopher and revolutionary who served as the Prime Minister of the Philippine Republic under Aguinaldo's leadership. He was known for his critical thinking and writings on the Philippine Revolution, and he played a key role in drafting the country's first constitution. Despite being paralyzed, Mabini continued to advocate for Philippine independence until his death. We also have Graciano Lopez Jaina, who was a writer and journalist who used his pen to advocate for Philippine independence. He founded the newspaper La Solidaridad, which became a platform for Filipino intellectuals to express their ideas and concerns. Jaina's writings inspired many to fight for their country's freedom, and he is considered one of the pioneers of Philippine journalism. Another key figure in the Philippine independence movement during the American period is Jose Rizal. Rizal was a writer, philosopher, and revolutionary who often regarded as the Philippines' national hero. He used his writings to expose the injustices and abuses of the Spanish colonial government, and he was a strong advocate for reform and independence. Rizal's execution in 1896 sparked the Philippine Revolution and inspired many to fight for their country's freedom. Last but not the least is Apolinario de la Cruz, commonly known as Hermano Puli. He was a religious leader and revolutionary who led the Cofradia de San Jose, a group that aimed to protect the rights of native Filipinos. He fought against the abuses of the Spanish colonial government and inspired many to join the fight for the Philippine independence.
Diverse tactics and methods were employed by the Philippine independence movement throughout the American era, with the ultimate goal of attaining independence from American colonial control. The movement for Philippine independence made various diplomatic efforts to further its cause on a global scale. To promote their cause and solicit assistance, they dispatched delegates to a number of nations including the United States. A delegation from the Philippines advocated for their independence at the 1919 Versailles Peace Conference. These diplomatic efforts, despite their failure, contributed to greater global understanding of the Philippine independence movement. Armed resistance was another strategy used by the Philippine independence movement to challenge American colonial control. The Philippine-American War, which lasted 3 years and claimed thousands of Filipino lives, was the most notable armed resistance. The Sakdalista movement, the Moro Rebellion, and the Puluhanes Rebellion were other armed resistance groups. Armed resistance eventually failed to bring out Philippine independence despite being able to inflict heavy losses on the American troops. Political organizing was another crucial strategy used by the Philippine independence movement. In order to further their cause through peaceful methods, political parties like the Partido Komunista ng Pilipinas and the Nacionalista Party were formed. Mass mobilization was another tactic used by the pro-independence movement in the Philippines to spread the word about their cause and win popular support. In order to demonstrate the power of the nationalist cause and put pressure on the American colonial authority to grant independence, this required planning rallies, protests, and other types of public demonstrations.
The Philippine independence aimed to secure the country's sovereignty and end colonial rule. First, let's have political impact. The movement for Philippine independence questioned the legitimacy of American colonial rule and inspired Filipinos to defend their liberties and rights. The movement resulted in the formation of political parties like the Partido Demokrata and the Partido Nacionalista, which sought to champion Filipino interests and advance greater autonomy. The movement also sparked the creation of revolutionary organizations like the Katipunan and the Philippine Republic, whose goal was to oust American colonial control and create an independent Philippines. Next is economic impact. The fight for Philippine independence had a substantial impact on the economy. The movement demanded greater economic independence for the Philippines and contested American economic dominance. The campaign resulted in the expansion of Filipino-owned enterprises and industries, including the hitherto American and foreign investor-dominated sugar and coconut industries. The movement also sparked the rise of a middle class in the Philippines, which contested the established social order and pushed for expanded political and economic rights. Last is cultural impact. The fight for Philippine independence also had a significant cultural impact. The movement emphasized Filipino nationalism as well as pride in Filipino heritage. The movement also resulted in the acceptance of Tagalog as the country's official tongue, which served as the foundation for the growth of the Filipino language. In summary, the fight for Philippine independence had a big influence on Philippine history during the American era. The movement opposed American colonial rule, supported Filipino nationalism, and gave rise to new cultural expressions, political organizations, and enterprises and industry under Filipino ownership. The independence movement's impact still influences Philippine society and culture today.